Oh, friends, are you in for a treat with this episode? Through the power of LinkedIn, I connected to Scott Miller, the author of multiple business and management books, host of a top leadership podcast, and former EVP and CMO at FranklinCovey, to be interviewed for this podcast. For those unfamiliar with Scott, he has a book series framed around this idea of mess to success. As a self-proclaimed mess for most of his working life, he shares his personal stories, tips, and advice throughout these books. What I love about our interview is Scott is very honest about his lack of training and skills at different points in his career, even as an executive. Instead of dwelling on his mistakes, he took action and sought out mentors, read books, got training, and improved his skills to support the roles he was in at the time. He really embodies the idea of controlling your career. You'll notice in this episode that I take time to plug his books and support his career coaching program, even though I'm a career coach with my own program. Why? Because everyone needs something different when it comes to career development and strategy. Scott's program is great for someone who wants to DIY, who likes group coaching, and it's a more cost-conscious option. My program is one-on-one, customized, and unique to the person. We also have different styles. There is no reason for me to not support someone doing similar work as me, because at the end of the day, you, the listener, are what matters. You need options and resources, and I want my podcast and my resources to be a place where you can receive those options. Stick around and enjoy this interview, because I can guarantee it will change and open your mind to new perspectives around career development, management, and hiring. For those looking to take their LinkedIn presence to the next level, check out my course, LinkedIn Level Up for the Corporate Professional, which will help you upgrade your profile, build intentional connections, and become a thought or industry leader through your content. This course also comes with a 1-hour strategy and coaching session with me, where we review your profile, posts, and stats to build a custom strategy that complements your career goals. If you're looking for links to the resources mentioned in this episode, you can head over to ridethetidecollective.com/podcast to find the episode blog, and I will link it in the show notes. If you want to connect with me or need inspirational and educational career management and advancement content, you can follow Ride the Tide Collective on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I am also on Clubhouse now at Ride the Tide COL. If you're loving these interview episodes, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. And if you didn't know, I also have the video version of this interview up on my YouTube channel, which you can also subscribe to. Just search Ride the Tide Collective. As always, I appreciate your support. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited for my guest today, because this is actually someone who resides in my state, which is very odd these days. Most of my guests come from California, because that is where I've spent most of my life. But Scott Miller is here in Utah, just up the road from me right now. And Scott, I have to tell you, okay, so Scott spent like 25 years at FranklinCovey. So first of all, I'm a planner nerd. So FranklinCovey is like, the holy grail of planners and planning and all things everything, right? So I've always been a fan of that company. And I will tell you, when we first moved here, we were driving around, I think to our dog groomers actually, and we passed the FranklinCovey building, and you would have thought that we were going to Disneyland. I did not know that FranklinCovey was based in Utah. Huh. I had no idea. So we passed the building and I was like, oh my gosh, like, my husband, I said, if I fail at my business, I'm going to go work there. I'm going to get a job, because that would be the coolest thing to me. So that I had to share that story, because I think it's so unique to just both of us being in Utah, and that would not be a normal thing. But thank you for coming on to the podcast
Julia,
with me today.
My pleasure. As you probably know, we have divested ourselves from the planning business over 12, 15 years ago. It still exists as a separate company, but we've been almost exclusively a leadership development, consulting training firm for 20 plus years. But we're very proud of our heritage, right? And
Yes,
thank you for all your
yes.
business. And
Oh my gosh, for
and
years.
yes, well, thank you for helping put my kids through college. Well, they're actually too young for college, but you helped to build their college savings accounts.
There we go. There we go. Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, so something else I want to say too, we got connected actually via LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
I have to share this quick story because I think we connected, I want to say sometime last year. It's been a minute since we've been connected. And I don't even remember why I connected with you initially, but I
Oh,
loved
probably
that
because
you
my
were,
fame. I'm sure it's my fame.
I'm sure that's what it was. Utah. And so I probably thought that was kind of cool too. So we got connected, and that was just a random, I connected with you and you accepted. And I want to share that because I never would have thought that someone who has your following, with the positions that you've held, with some of the success that you have had in your career, would connect with me, and you did. And I think that that shows some of the power of LinkedIn, because now we're probably a year-ish later, and that's how we got connected for you to be on my podcast. So I just have to put that out there for everybody. Like, shoot your shot. If it's somebody that you want to be connected to for whatever reason, and you and I are in a similar field as well. And so I know a lot of your content really resonates with me. So I think that people need to hear that. They need to hear the success stories of LinkedIn, even if it takes a year for something to happen there. Just having that connection, I think, is really important for people.
Well, part of that was great. And part of that was pure hogwash, because you have greatly exaggerated my stature and influence. So I find you to be a peer. We're going to have a great conversation today. I'm honored to be on your podcast. Don't sell yourself short by any stretch, Julia. Delighted to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you. And I want to dive right in, because I know we have a lot to cover. You're doing a lot of big things right now. And as I said, you spent the majority of your career at FranklinCovey. You've recently sort of stepped away. You're doing your own thing, but you're also still connected with them. But what I would love to know as we kick this off is, what are some of like the poignant transitions that you've had in your career that has gotten you to this place? Because being with a company for that long, you don't see that very much anymore. So I would love to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's highly unusual to have someone of my generation, or even the younger generation, stay somewhere for 25 years. It wasn't that I didn't have options, right? I had lots of options, but we have a great culture in the company, and I'm proud to be an ambassador. I don't work for the firm anymore. I was an executive officer in the company. I was the chief marketing officer for, nearly a decade. But to answer your question, the big pivot points were all self-directed. I had 9 separate careers inside of FranklinCovey over 25 years. I just happened to be deliberate enough and intentional enough, and maybe fortunate enough, to where I was able to build that single career inside of one firm. It's actually quite rare these days, but I was always my decision. I mean, my pivot points were usually one of two things. It was because I chose to disrupt myself. I'm quite fearless that way. I don't skydive. I don't scuba dive. I don't, rock climb. I'm not that kind of fearless, but I'm quite fearless with moving outside of my comfort zone, recognizing that I'm kind of clinging to the pain that I know versus the growth that I need. So I'm pretty good. I'm not pretty good. I'm extraordinary at disrupting myself before someone else disrupts me. I just passionately believe, act or be acted upon. And here's why. Early in my career, Julia, I heard this horrifying adage that's also kind of insulting, but also really inspiring. And that is, you're never in the room when your career is decided for you. And it's so piercingly true. And I heard that and I was disgusted. And I thought, that's not going to happen to me. I am in control of my career, not the CFO or the CEO or someone else. And so I was very proactive around disrupting myself, leaving jobs long before the boss thought I should leave. I never wanted to have the boss call me and say, hey, Scott, I've been thinking, because that never ends well. I've been thinking that maybe it's time, so that's the first thing, as I was a strong disruptor. I could talk more about it if you'd like, in the science behind self-disruption. The second is I just had a series of mentors and coaches and people who believed in me more than I believed in myself. They groomed me. They had a lot of high courage conversations with me, took me behind the woodshed metaphorically and smacked the what out of me and said, stop doing that and stop saying that and instead do this. And so I had a lot of people that put their reputations on the line for me and sort of professionally parented me. And to each of those people, men and women throughout my career, I'll always be indebted. And I write about them frequently in my blogs and in my Inc. column for Inc. magazine and my books. I have no shortage of appreciation and gratitude for those who have lifted me up throughout my career.
Okay, so I'm in. I love all of this because I don't know if you know this, but my coaching program is called Control Your Career. So the tenets of what I'm doing, very similar to what you're doing and how you've led your career. And it's getting people to understand you have more control than you think if you take time to really do a good self-analysis, disrupt yourself, get those good mentors, and I'm really critical of mentors when I'm talking to clients because I want to make sure that they don't have just that one person that they're following or that one boss. Like, you have to have such an array of people around you that are going to say different things and that are going to bring out different parts of you. So I love hearing that you were so proactive about that in your career, just naturally, because I don't know that happens very often for people. And so to hear that, I think is really energizing. So, yeah.
Julia, you and I are completely in vision lock. Like you, I have a online career coaching program called Ignite Your Genius. And the whole premise of it is stop living your career accidentally. Take control, stop blaming other people, be more deliberate, think long-term. And to your point, mentorship can be dangerous because most people that are mentors know their path. They know their strengths. They know their education. And therefore, they're fairly likely going to prescribe for you the same path they took, unless they've been formally trained around how to coach and be a mentor. So to your point, you got to have a buffet of people who are asking big questions and encouraging you on your path, not trying to have you replicate theirs.
What do you think? You talk about the disruption, and I think that's such a unique quality that someone has to do for themselves. Where do you think that comes from for you? Because I find that so many clients have such a fear around speaking up for themselves or advocating for themselves in the workplace. Where do you think it comes from for you?
I'm a kind of naturally courageous person because I think it's a skill. I think it's a skill set that everyone can learn. There's some things you can't learn. Like I'm never gonna pilot a jet. I mean, yes, I could, but the price to pay is too hard. I'm never gonna, transplant a heart. Never. Yeah, most skills, however, that are, ubiquitous, you can learn. Everyone can learn to become more courageous. Everyone can learn that sort of delicate balance of having, curiosity and abundance, but also self-preservation and being your own champion, right? That's it's EQ, right? It's just knowing that you're collaborative, you're abundant, you are interested in other people, but you also are interested in yourself, and that you want to make sure that your story is told and that you're confident and competent and have high care. So I have character. So I have no problem championing myself. Who else is going to? Now, there are people, but this is my brand. This is my reputation. This is my life. So I balance championing myself with championing other people. I have the world's largest leadership podcast. I'm not the guest. I'm the host. The whole thing is to highlight other people. All my books are about other people. Mm-hmm. So there's a balance. And I think everyone should learn it. So there's, you can go over, you can be a aggrandizing person, and you can be only talking about yourself. There's a delicate balance. It's a tension that you learn. But I have just been, by the way, I'm not a naturally outgoing extrovert. I'm probably secretly an introvert that's masquerading as an extrovert, because by and large, I think extroverts have more influence and control in business and society. And it's not to diminish the contribution of introverts, because I think actually I am one, but I kind of will myself to be more charismatic, more outgoing, louder because I think that's been successful for me in my career. Maybe that's called a sociopath. I don't know, but I do think there's some truth to that without minimizing any introverts. And so I have found a niche for myself that now is my personality. It's who I am, and I use that. I use that confidence to lift other people, to build up people's careers and shine the spotlight on them. But I do think it's a learned skill that you can become more confident and more delicate and diplomatic on how you champion yourself. I love it when others champion me, and I love to champion other people, and I'm never afraid to champion myself.
That's awesome. Oh, I love hearing that. Okay. I do have to say too, because as a career coach, you know, a lot of people are calling themselves coaches these days, or they're saying, oh, I'm a mentor. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. But then everything is about them. Everything is about their story. Everything is about what they've gone through, and they're selling their story. And it's a red flag to me when I see that from other coaches, specifically on the career side, because that's, that's my world. But I do have to say, I went through your course. You sent me some materials so I could look through. Everything in your course is so like focused on the person, and it is so intentional. And I so appreciate that, because I feel like you are one of the people that's out there doing it right. And yes, you share your story as part of that process to help relate to people. But I love seeing other coaches out there that are really like, look, this is about you. This is your story. This is your path. And you're really helping them find their voice. And I think that is so key when people are looking for coaches and mentors. And even I think, if you have a hand in your manager, if you're really looking at who you want to work for, I think that's also important.
Well, Julia, thank you for that. I do not portray myself as a career coach. I do not accept clients. The email burns off the hook every day, people wanting me to coach them. I do not. I'm not a certified coach. I don't want to be. What I am is a person that's had a very successful career with lots of mistakes and some successes, and that if others can learn from my career, the highs and the lows, and from my 30 years in the leadership development industry about self-awareness and brand and reputation and relationships, then I think someone could appreciate, the course that I've designed. And it's actually thousands of people are taking it, and I'm delighted to see that. And I think you are a career coach. I am someone who's had a successful career that has, codified some of the insights and offered them up for people to use at their own pace. There's a huge difference, between the value that you offer and sort of the ancillary value that I'm trying to offer.
And I really appreciate that distinction, because when people are out there looking for coaches, I'm not always going to be the best person for them to go to.
Right.
Sometimes it makes more sense to do a program like yours, or to read your books, or to have somebody who has experience in an industry that you're interested in, And so I really appreciate your transparency on that in this conversation, because I think sometimes people are like, who do I go to? Do I go to somebody that says they're a career coach, or do I go to somebody who has,
go to Julia, and if Julia thinks that my content or course can help you, she'll let you know, right? You're the physician, I'm the pharmacist. I may hold the key, right? But you first got to go to the physician.
Well, and I do more one-on-one. So that's my jam.
Right.
I like the one-on-one stuff. You're doing more group stuff. And I think that's so cool as well, because there are so many options out there for everyone. And so you just have to figure out what is going to work best for you for the season that you're in your career. So
Well
I love that. Okay. So let's actually talk a little bit about some of what you've done. So one of the things that I love my guests to do is talk about management tips. So whether that's you as a manager for other people, or you being managed by somebody else, and you happen to have a book out there that actually talks about it.
What do you know?
It's been really great. So I would love for you to if you could give like your top 3 management tips? And it can obviously come from your book or your own experience. I would love for you to share that with the audience.
Yeah, sure. I wrote a column this morning that'll come in Inc. magazine probably next week. I write a weekly column. And I talked about how every company is now a technology company. I don't care if you're Burger King or you're selling India Hicks side hustle jewelry or you're nail tech. I mean, honestly, right? With social media and marketing automation and your calendaring, every company is a technology company now. And every company is in the same business. They're in the people business. Again, whether you're a pharmaceutical company or you're a hospital or you're CBS or you're Dairy Queen or Dillard's, you're in the people business. And so I think the number one leadership insight I would give is that as a leader, your job is to achieve results with and through other people. Let that sit for a second. As a leader, your job is to achieve results with and through other people. And I think the majority of leaders became a formal leader of people because they were the top individual contributor. They were the top producer. They were the most efficient dental hygienist or the most creative digital designer or the top salesperson. And now they're promoted into be the leading person when often the skills that make you the most talented digital designer do not make you the leader of creative. In fact, they're often inversely correlated. And so when individual contributors get promoted to become leaders of people, they have to realize what got me here won't get me there. I may need to leave all of my skills behind and adopt brand new skills. There's a whole podcast on making sure that leading people is right for you. In fact, I just fundamentally believe not everyone should be a leader of people. Not everyone should be an anesthesiologist. Not everyone should be a plumber. Not everyone should be a leader. And so when you become a leader of people, you have to understand you're in the people business. And your job is not to rush in and save the day. Your job is not to be the genius in the room like you were back when you were the salesperson, but now your job is to be the genius maker of others. Liz Wiseman wrote a book called Multipliers. It's had a profound impact on me. She's a good friend of mine. She's endorsed my books and I strongly recommend your audience read the book Multipliers. It's an extraordinary leadership book. That's the first thing, right? Is recognize that your job is to achieve results with and through other people. Therefore, relationships are everything. Let me debunk the idea that people are an organization's most valuable asset. It's not true. You're in the people business, but people are not a company's most valuable asset. It's not true. It's the relationships between those people that is your ultimate competitive advantage. Because Julia can have a Oxford degree and be a Rhodes Scholar, and Scott can be a master black belt in Six Sigma from MIT. We can be the smartest people in the world. But if we can't get along, we can't collaborate, we can't forgive, we can't pre-forgive each other. Because they're going to do something that pisses me off. I'm going to say something that pisses you off. And if we can't work together, the company doesn't need us. And when you're a leader, you have to understand you are in the relationship business. We can talk about that for a whole hour. What does that mean? But I think generally, those are the first big points. Others, I think as a leader, your number one job is to recruit and retain talent. Recruit and retain talent. Because, we could go for an hour about the brain drain coming on and the tsunami of transition, right? Every company is sitting on a massive amount of money right now. Money is basically free. You can borrow money for almost free right now. So every company is happy to pay 25% more to bring you out of that company into theirs. And so there is a war on talent like we have never seen right now. So as a leader, your job isn't just to recruit, but retain. I think that leaders fall on this all the time. They take it for granted. The number of people that call me every day asking me for advice on should they stay or should they leave. 3 calls today. 3 calls today. Friends, colleagues, former employees that worked for me asking me should they stay or leave, because you know what? Their leader has no clue. The leader has no clue. Clueless that LinkedIn is flooding their inbox every day. Well, we have a job open and perhaps you'll be interested, but if you're not, perhaps someone else, which otherwise we want you, will you call me, right? That's the first thing. Recruit and retain talent. And the second most important job is to provide people feedback on their blind spots. is as a leader, this is the biggest gift you give your people, is discussing the undiscussables, moving outside your comfort zone and being the leader who actually loves your team members enough to say, listen, I need to have an uncomfortable conversation with you. My intent is not to embarrass you. It's not to minimize you. My intent is to help you build a great career here. But I care about you enough to tell you that you need to change up your deodorant because you're breaking through it in the hot Utah summer. And I would hate for anybody to notice that. Or you need to be more aware of how often you blame other people and you never take responsibility, or you're always late, or there's always an excuse. Or to be the leader that says, you know, the statistics show that men speak 7,000 words a day, and women on average speak 20,000 words a day, which is why so many women find it frustrating working in a male-dominated environment, because they're viewed as chatty, or they're viewed as, you know, giving too much context. And I want for you to build a great career here. So I'd like for you to hold out some of that context, offer it up if someone asks you. But beyond that, I want you to be very succinct, because this is the culture in this company. You get the point, right? Is leaders declare their intent and they offer feedback to their people on their blind spots. I could keep going, but those are some good tips, I think, that will get you started.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. And I mean, really ushering your people into the culture. You know, I've been in environments where I wasn't ushered, you know, and the result of that can be career
Oh my
killing,
gosh. So,
you know?
well said. I not just usher, but shepherd, right?
Yes.
Shepherd you through so you understand, here's what our company values. Here's what they don't value. Here's the kind of personalities that get promoted. Here's the kind that don't. And right or wrong, you're right to usher in and then shepherd until you kind of are safe in the flock. Because I mean, isn't that true? I mean, even at FranklinCovey, it's a wonderful organization. We rarely, if ever, successfully hire and retain senior leaders from outside organizations because they don't thrive in our culture. They just don't understand it. They don't understand what Utah nice means. They don't understand, right, what it's like to live and work in Utah. It's even virtually, it's very different than New Jersey, Alabama, California.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's such a lack of management training out there right now, which obviously that's what FranklinCovey is doing. That's what you're doing as well. And I so appreciate that as somebody who has been on the other side of horribly bad leadership, you know, and I work with a lot of high achieving people. I'm a high achiever myself, high producer. And I have rarely, I mean, there's like, I can name maybe 2 people in my entire career that could really hold on to me and like get me through in a way that was great for everybody, because there was so much threat for the high achiever, you know? And so I go back to like, look, you're managing and you're leading. Don't push your best people away, because they will leave you. And then you're going to know what hit you when all that productivity goes straight out the window. And so,
Amen. Hallelujah. PTL. You know, I co-authored a book 2 years ago called Everyone Deserves a Great Manager.
yes.
And we wrote the book because Harvard Business Review published a study that said, Julia, the average age someone receives their first promotion into management is age 30. Yet the science and the research shows the average age those same people receive their first management leadership training, age 42. That on average, you've got 12 years of people that are like me, high producing individual contributors. I become a leader, and now I'm wreaking havoc across the company because I have no idea what to do. I'm not a bad person. I'm a bad leader. I don't know what to do. I wasn't taught that my job is to recruit and retain people who are smarter than me, who are noticeably more competent. I thought my job was to be the expert in the room. My job was to be the top dog and hire people I can control and turn into me. I mean, that sounds sick, but I mean, that's not so far-fetched. But that's not my job. My job is to be secure enough in my position that I go out and hire people who show me up. And hopefully the company I work with recognizes that I'm so secure and I'm so competent that I want to be overshadowed because I'm a linchpin for talent. But I'll tell you, not every company sees that, right? You can abundance yourself out of a job in some companies, right? Well, why do we need you? You've got all of them, you're out. I don't mean to be naive. You want to work for an organization that enables you to be so confident that you can be humble and hire people that are more talented than you are to work for you.
Right.
That's not every company.
Right. And as a manager, that's you advocating for yourself as a manager to those above you. Your intention as a manager, who you want to be, what you're trying to do. And I think it trails on through your career. You have to continue to advocate for yourself and your brand, right? What you're putting out into the world, who you are as a leader and what you're trying to do. Because if you become branded as somebody who ushers in talent and really cultivates them to succeed, you have to share that so that you don't get yourself kicked out of the company.
Yeah. Nicely said. For those listeners that might think I'm dropping pearls of wisdom, I am. But let me tell you, I didn't always lead that way, right? It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I realized, oh, my job isn't to be the genius in the room. My job isn't to be the know-it-all. Honest to God, for much of my career as a chief marketing officer, Julia, I thought my job was to be the most creative, the most well-read, the smartest. The buck stopped with me. Well, the buck did stop with me, but that didn't mean that all ideas had to be mine. It took me reading Liz Wiseman's book, but I realized my job is not to be the genius, but rather the genius maker of others. And when I read her book, it changed my entire career. I actually stepped down as the chief marketing officer. I had served for almost 8 years, 3 times the national average for a public company CMO. I stepped aside, took a different job, and then left the firm 2 years later on great standing. But I didn't always lead this way, right? This came to me hard because even for being in a leadership development company, I hadn't had a whole lot of training. I'll be honest, I'm not sure I ever should have been a leader of people. I think, I might have had a better career being an individual producer. The problem is so many organizations make the only way for you to earn more money, get a promotion, have more influence is to lead people. So they lure the wrong people into leadership. And that what happens is you now have your top salesperson. She becomes the sales leader. She hates it because she spends all of her time analyzing pipeline and calling people out on their behavior and having high courage conversation and firing. She hates it. So what does she do? Does she step back into a sales role? No, she quits because it's too embarrassing to step back. So now you've lost your top sales talent and you've lost your top leadership talent. So listen up, people. When you're recruiting people to become leaders in your organization, tell the truth. Sit them down and say, hey, we're thinking about talking to you about becoming a leader. Let's talk about all your strengths and all your weaknesses and what will you have to stop doing and start doing. And it's this right track for you. And you'll do a better job of recruiting the right people into leadership roles.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. All of that.
Sorry, I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate.
Man, if you went through my social media posts, you're echoing everything that I'm saying because I've lived it. I've lived on the other side of that. And so I'm really passionate about helping professionals figure out, should you even be in management? Because I don't think everybody is built for management. They're just not. And that's
no shame. No shame in that.
No shame. Figure it out, and if you do want to go into management and your company doesn't offer that, again, take control of whatever your situation is. Read the books, listen to the podcast, get your own coach, or ask them to pay for coaching for you if they don't have a formalized program. Do something to help you become a better manager.
I feel like we're in leadership church or leadership synagogue or mosque. I'm in the first pew. I'm listening, Pastor. Keep it coming on.
Oh my gosh. It kills me. And I think, so you spoke in my mastermind a few weeks back at the time that we're recording this. And I'm pretty sure it was you that said you wish that companies had an individual contributor track and then a management only track. And when you said that, I was like, yes, that I feel like every company needs that because it's so true. People get split and it's just not, it's not fair to the individual contributors that are so good at what they do and want to continue to do that, and there's nowhere for them to go. And then
Not
they're going
fair.
to switch. They're the
Well,
ones
there is
that are
somewhere
going
for them to go. There's two places to go: out or up into leadership, and both end up doing the same thing to the company. You end up leading both ways, because if it's not right for you, you're out.
right.
And how many times in our career have we seen someone go up and then choose to step down? It's very rare, right? We have egos.
Right. Right.
How emasculating is that?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I love all of this conversation. It's so great. Okay, so you the book
And let the readers
Multipliers.
know, the listeners know, the watchers, it's all coming from Utah. It's all Utah intellect. Genius, baby. Utah is the
That's
place
right.
to be. Don't
That's
move
right.
here. Just visit and leave.
We're being flooded right now. But honestly, I was one of those people. I flooded in from California a couple years ago, so I can't talk.
We cut it off after you. You were good.
I was telling my husband, I'm like, I feel like we moved here before it was the cool thing to
Oh,
do.
yes.
We got
yes.
here before the pandemic. So like we're good. I think we
It's
made
why
the
I
cut.
friended you. That's why I accepted your LinkedIn invitation, because you were part of the cool class.
Yes, there we go. There we go. Okay, so I love resourcing our people, which obviously we're already resourcing them a ton. You have your own books. We've talked about the Multipliers book, but I want to ask the question anyway, because sometimes there's always a couple of other books lingering in there. Tell me about a book that has changed your perspective on your career or life.
Well, lots of them. Well, so so you can see behind me, these are all the books that were sent to me this week to read for people who want to be on the podcast. There's 60. This is this week. I feel like I'm a publisher, getting manuscripts. Gosh, what was the name of this book? I can't. I'm escaping. I interviewed him on my podcast, and I'm escaping him. I'm gonna have to pick a different book because I can't remember it. Can I share the insight? Can I share the insight?
Yes. And just email me when you remember, and I'll add it into the blog post for this episode.
I will. I can't believe I'm missing this. But here was the insight in the book. It was the gentleman who wrote the book that debunked Malcolm Gladwell's work on 10,000 hours. I know he's Jewish because he has a Jewish name, and he mentioned it to me. I can't remember his name. I'll see if it comes to me. Anyway, the whole idea in the book was about, in careers, there are generalists and there are specialists. And that I was a generalist. And that specialists are anesthesiologists, chemical engineers, patent attorneys, hairdressers, that kind of stuff, right? And they get a badge, they get a certification, they know who they are, and they go out and they start, doing it immediately.
Right.
And then there is the rest of the world that are generalists, right? You're in sales, you're in management, you're in relationships, you're in project management, your supply chain, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a writer, you're a podcaster, you're a coach. And you kind of have this insecurity in your 20s and 30s, because you see your specialist friends that are, they're patent attorneys, they're chemical engineers, they're anesthesiologists, they're physical, or they're physician's assistants. They know who they are, they know the career track, they know the pay, they go from this city to this city, and they're secure, they're consistent, they're confident. And then there's the rest of us that have these sort of identity crises in our life, that we're generalists, and we get intimidated by them. And then something happens, like in your 40s, where you start to realize, oh, I have lots of skills, right? I can write, I can read, I can speak, I can synthesize, I can lead, I can have good judgment. I have all these skills. And that's who makes it to the C-suite. Those are the entrepreneurs, the people that are emotionally agile. They're intellectually nimble. They can be a COO, a CMO, or a CEO. And so I would just say, I'm sorry I forgot the book. I'm disappointed in myself. I usually have a pretty good recall. But the concept is that great for specialists. My brother is a specialist, right? Chemical engineer, master's from MIT. And my parents are like, what do you do? How do you earn money? I'm like, I don't know. To my 20s and 30s, I have no idea. And then I started to realize later, all these skills are kind of coming together. I think the payoff is massive for generalists.
Yeah.
Hang in there. Hang in there. 20s and 30s, you're going to have all kinds of anxiety. Try stuff, build your skills, write, read, speak, create, design. And you're going to find that it's going to come and reward you handsomely in your late 40s, maybe even early 40s, 50s, and 60s. The payoff is huge. Generalists, hang in there.
Okay, I have to tell you.
David Epstein is the name of the author.
Okay.
David Epstein, and the book is called, I can't think of it.
I'll find it. I'll find it. I'll link it in the blog post. Okay, so first of all, I am a generalist, so that explains so much about my career. I'll tell you, the majority of my clients, hearing you talk about that, the majority of my clients are generalists. And the majority of people who come to me for what I do are generalists. And I think that's why. And I'm 1,000% going to go pick up that book because it is, oh, there it is, range. Okay. We will get it linked into the blog post for this episode, along with all the other resources that have been mentioned. But it's so true because I have these people come to me who are really great at their jobs, and they come to me and they're lost and they're confused. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know.
They're not lost. They're not lost. They just can't see the clarity. If someone had told me early, I interrupted you. I apologize.
That's okay.
If someone had told me back when I was 20, here's going to be your career, your 20s and 30s and half of your 40s, you're going to do lots of different things. You're not going to have the badge at a cocktail party when someone says, what do you do? And they say, I'm a podiatrist. I'm a federal judge. I'm a welder. And they come to you and you say, I'm a project manager. I work in operations. It's okay because it's going to pay off. Be patient. It's just absorb, have curiosity. It's okay. No one told me that.
Mm-mm.
But no. if you actually, that doesn't mean you can just haphazardly try 70 things and all of a sudden one day you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be employed. No, you got to be thoughtful around, why are you learning this? What could this contribute to? Do you have skills that are marketable in the real time? And then I'm telling you, later in your life, it's gonna come together for you. It's not gonna come together accidentally. Pixie dust doesn't exist. You've got to pull it together, but you've got to be mindful to give yourself a break early on and realize you're building invaluable skills. Mm-hmm. You've got to tease them together with a red thread and figure out, I've learned all of this. Here's what I can do.
Yes. And I will tell you, it is so important to do that when you're healthy. So when you're happiest in your job, do that work. Because when you get to the point of desperation, that's when a lot of people reach out when they can't take it anymore, all of your judgment will be clouded around what you're good at, who you are, all of that. And that's what ends up happening. I see people that they're on the cusp of desperation. They're not quite there because they're high achieving, right? So desperation's not really like a place they want to live, but they're right there. And I sit with them, they tell me their story, and I just regurgitate back all these amazing things that they've done and all these skills that they've had. And they sit there and they're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Julia, I also think it's because so many of us define ourselves by our career, especially in America, not in Europe, right? I mean, when I talk to my friends in Europe, they never talk about their careers. Never. In America, it's like our complete persona, right?
Yeah.
Your job is not your life. Your job is your career. And this is hard for Americans. It's even more difficult for single people. I was single till I was 42. My career was who I was. Take me to a cocktail party, and I somehow worked in my title, my compensation, I worked it in because this was who I was, right? I didn't have any kids, and I didn't have a home, and I didn't have a legacy. And so I just remind people, your job is your career. Your job is not your life. Do not let your job define who you are. And when you're struggling in your career, or you're fired or downside or furloughed off, have some sense of boundaries around, this is not an indictment on who you are as a person. Now, you should have had your ear to the ground, and you should have been developing a deliberate career, and you should have been acting and disrupting before you were disrupted, but that, of course, isn't always the case, right? I mean, there's external things that happen to the most talented people.
Right. Oh man. Oh, okay. I love this. Like, audience, I hope you're hearing all of this. Oh, this is it. I mean, and this is what's happening right now. You talked about earlier, like there's a disruption in the world happening right now, obviously with the pandemic, but within the corporate world, people are done. Like they want out. And what we're talking about right here, this is the work. This is the work that you need to be putting in, courses like what Scott has to offer. Like that'll give you such a great base of information to make some really strategic decisions for yourself, not for somebody else, not because somebody else headhunted you away. Just because you get contacted by somebody doesn't mean you should leave. And
Right.
I think having a good grasp on who you are, what you want, like that will help you make those decisions so much easier and so much quicker for
And
yourself.
it's a muddy process. It isn't like you do one coaching call, you go home and you do some exercises in my program and it's clear. Give yourself a break, right? It's a process. And I don't want to do when I grow up. I have no idea what I want to do, right? Some people, the annoying ones that are younger in their years, they know they want to do this or that. Great for them, right? But that's not the way it works for most of us. Most of us hopefully uncover or discover throughout our careers. And then there are some of us whose vocation isn't our avocation, right? Sometimes we just have a career because it's a means to an end and we live our passions and lives outside of our career, right? There's lots of people that have a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5 and they check out because that's not what defines them. And then there's people like me where their career does define a lot of them.
Mhm.
And it's a struggle to kind of figure out what is my contribution. I mean, if you would have asked me 15 years ago, Scott, do you know that your 50s and 60s are all going to be as a speaker, an author, a podcaster, a host, a television personality, a radio personality? I would have said, yeah, I don't think so. I think you got the wrong Scott Miller. It's a common name.
Oh, like I own my own business now. And if you had told me like 6 years ago, honestly, that's what I would have been doing, I would have laughed in your face because I wanted the stability of a 9 to 5 at that time. But life happens. And all of a sudden, you're faced with a different set of changes, a different set of circumstances that you never saw coming. But I knew myself well enough because I've done this, when you're in it, you do this work regularly for yourself. And I knew what I could make that pivot pretty quickly to know this is what I want, this is what I don't want, all of that. And it's that preparation piece. When you've done that for yourself, oh, it makes the transitions so much easier to manage. Doesn't make them less difficult, but it makes it easier to manage and walk through.
This is the most important point of your whole podcast because although we both agree that careers need to be deliberate and intentional and designed by you. Mm-hmm. But there also is serendipity. And there is having an open heart and ear and eye to things that might not have been in your path, right? And yes. When one door closes, another opens. Sometimes a disappointment turns into an appointment. I'm generally a realist. I'm not a pessimist, and I'm not always an optimist. I'm a realist. But I now, when something doesn't go my way, I never brood. I immediately think, okay, so what does this mean? What is the opportunity? Here's a good example. I lost like a big opportunity closed for me this morning. A big opportunity folded for me. And I was disappointed because I kind of wanted to win it. And the moment it folded, I thought, so what does this mean? This is a gift to me. Because now this was going to take me 800 hours the next year. And now I have that 800 hours literally to put in to the things that I'm already working on and making them better. That sounds maybe like I'm making that up. No, I immediately pivoted to, this is a gift to me. Because that was going to be a huge project and it would have probably paid well, blah, blah, blah. But what is the silver lining in that? So for those that are listening and watching, take control of your career, own it yourself. And also have an open mind to serendipity that might come your way, because that might actually be where your opportunity is. Can I share one thought on that?
Yeah, I love that.
I wrote a new book called Master Mentors. It's coming out in September, on September 7th. And in essence, it is me plucking out 30 of kind of my favorite interviews in the first year of the podcast. And I share a transformative insight from 30 from 30 guests. It's called Master Mentors. I'd love to have you order a copy on Amazon. It drops on the 7th of September. One of the mentors, Julia, is a woman named Karen Dillon. She's the former editor of the Harvard Business Review. Not too shabby, right? And she co-wrote a book with the late genius Clayton Christensen called How Will You Measure Your Life? Phenomenal book. How will you measure your life? They take business principles and bring them into our personal lives. And in it, she shares a Harvard Business School study that said 93% of organizations that achieve financial success do so with an emergent strategy, not the deliberate strategy they set out with. Only 7% of the time that companies that achieve their financial results do it with the entrepreneurs, the CEOs, the founders' original idea. 93% of the time, it's a different idea. It's something they never knew about, or they had to pivot. They had to, they had to be open to influence or open to somebody else's idea. The same with your life. You might need to have a deliberate path, but I don't know if it's 93% of the time, but some large portion of the time, something might come your way to say, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Maybe I should try that. Yeah. Be open to that.
Yeah. Oh.
And if you're too open to it, you can find yourself pinging around and doing 9 careers in 9 years, never getting traction. And now your brand is as an opportunist, right? Or that you're just accidental. So you've got to just have like I liken it to learning how to drive a stick shift, right? You got to have like that delicate balance going uphill of clutch and gas, right? Clutch and gas. And it's the same kind of analogy in your career. You got to fine tune yourself, and it's different per car, right? Not the same lever won't work in my Volkswagen that works in my Fiat.
Right. Oh, I love that. Such great insights. And again, I'll link that book and your book and probably that other book down in the blog post for this episode. Okay. So Scott, you've got books out, you've got books coming out, you've got a coaching program. Can you share a little bit about that with us? You just talked about the mentor book that's coming out. I think you have a marketing book out.
I do.
Can you give us just a little rundown of those things so the audience knows what you've got going on and they can go check that out?
I'm honored. Strap in and pour yourself a margarita. I have a 10-year, 10-book deal that's in the mess to success genre. The first book was Management Mess to Leadership Success. The second book just launched a month ago called Marketing Mess to Brand Success. If someone's watching the podcast, you can see behind me Job Mess to Career Success launches in 2022. Communication Mess to Influence Success launches in 2023. And then a whole variety, Sales Mess, Relationship Mess, Parenting Mess, 10 books in 10 years. And then I also have a deal with HarperCollins to write 10 books in 10 years called Master Mentors. Every year, I will publish a new book. These are easy, breezy, funny, short read books. I do not write War and Peace. I do not write Good to Great. I write easy, breezy stuff. Master Mentors Volume 1, 30 Transformational Insights from Our Greatest Minds, drops on September 7th. I have the Ignite Your Genius coaching series that you can visit at scottjeffreymiller.com. I host the world's largest leadership podcast called On Leadership with Scott Miller. Great interviews on that. And then I also host an interview on bookclub.com. So bookclub.com is a new venture. I am the host of one of the leadership series on that. It launches on July 7th. It launches like shortly. But all those things are available to learn about at scottjeffreymiller.com. You can Google me. My wife says I'm overexposed. It's not hard to find me these days. Well, Thank you for the platform. Thank you for letting me talk about some of the projects I'm passionate about. I appreciate you shining your light onto me today, Julie.
Oh, yes. And if anybody wants to contact you, website, LinkedIn, what's your preferred
LinkedIn is great. There? LinkedIn is great. I write a blog each week. I post an ink column there. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. LinkedIn probably is the strong piece. You also can contact me via my website at scottjeffreymiller.com. You Google me and there's lots of ways to find me pretty easily.
That's amazing. Scott, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. This was such a great conversation. And I know my people are going to get so much out of it. All the generalists out there, they're going to love it. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
My apologies to David Epstein for taking 5 minutes to remember his name. Julia, thank you for the platform.